At the same time, I'm now on section 3, which is women's work. At the same time that Waring was looking at what war cost, she also looked at how women's labor worldwide was valued. So remember I talked about these two different things. So one is like, what does war cost? And then she looks at, and what are women worth, basically. Not what are women worth in some kind of ontological sense, what is their actual value, but how are women valued as people, as players in the market, right? And you can imagine, of course, what she found. How much is women's labor valued? Well, how many people who are listening to this now believe that, say, a caregiver of any variety should be paid a minimum wage, at least a minimum wage? How many of you believe that? How about your mothers? Do you believe your mother should be paid for, even if she's a working mom, that she should be paid for raising a child, one child, two children? If not, well, why not? How is raising a child free labor? Because that's the idea. It's like, well, why does it fall on the mother? And we're really facing this at the moment because with COVID, the issue is that if you can't put children back into school, which, if nothing else, at least babysits your kids, in some way, shape, or form, then somebody is going to have to take time off. Somebody's going to have to put aside time in their day to make sure that the children don't go crazy and do crazy things, which toddlers and young children, well, really, children right up to the age of pretty much, like, I don't know, when I was 17, I was still doing stupid stuff. Well, maybe especially when I was 17. So how the bizarre thing about this is when people say, well, we shouldn't have to pay a mother for her labor. It's like, so what we're saying is the raising of children isn't actually work. And if it is work, it's not important work. I mean, what does the mother not do? The mother instills, probably on a day-to-day basis, the basic rules in the adult to be, how to operate, how to function in a society, what's right and wrong, what's permitted and what is not permitted, how to behave in a group, how to get over fears, how to deal with shame, how to proceed to happiness. What is it that the mother doesn't do, or that the caregiver doesn't do? Because maybe it's a grandmother, or maybe it's an uncle, or maybe it's a grandfather, or maybe it's a father, maybe it's a man. It doesn't really matter who the caregiver is. The point is that we look at that job and say, whatever, they're not making money, then it's not important. And why should we pay them? Because the labor is free. It's like, nothing's free, right? So we have all these myths about motherhood, about how magical it is and how wonderful it's supposed to be, and how this is women's true role in life, and that if there's a womb, there's a way. Basically, this is the way it has to be, and it has to be, the womb has to be filled, and blah. It's like, okay, well, if it's so very, very important, why haven't men jumped on it? Because usually men are all over the most important stuff, but men are like, no, we're good. You guys do that stuff. So then men don't want the role. They don't want the job. And if men don't want the job, then it's not a good job to have, basically. So why are we barely just now beginning to cover people who have decided to raise new human beings, which is basically what motherhood is? I mean, you're saying, okay, now we've got to make some new humans, and it's not as though this is a task which you can sort of do for a couple of hours a day and then wander off. It's like, you've got to be there. You've got to be there all the time. And you have to be on call, and you can't be, it's unlike the football where you can't be more than 12 yards away from the president. With your child, you can't be more like 3 yards away from your child, unless they get killed or do something dumb and wander out into the street and play in traffic and all that stuff. So maternity and paternity leave are still left up to the marketplace, although some basic leave is now mandated in Canada. Well, that's just the beginning of it. That's an easy. It's like, okay, so you're physically recovering, and the demands of a newborn are so high that people are like, all right, we have to, we got to cover this. In the United States, however, maternity leave is 12 weeks of unpaid leave. So while you're at home making a new consumer, which the society needs, you can live on whatever you like. Air. Well, you can't live on water because you can't get it pumped into your house anymore because you can't pay the water bill. And sun, I guess, if there's sun outside. But basically, go figure it out. You're a mom now. Be resourceful. Go figure it out. The unwillingness to do more than pay lip service to what is, according to the patriarchy, women's work, which is to bear and raise children, and the Republicans are all over this still, is a curious thing. It means that half the population works, quote unquote, for free. They don't have to be paid because we believe it's natural for women to have children. Well, it's also natural for me to eat, for instance. I still have to pay for it, though. Like, I can't go to Loblaws and say, look, it's natural for me to eat, so I'll just go and take some things I need, right? And they're like, no, that's not how it works. We need you to give us some ducats. And you're like, oh, what? So that's not how that works. It's also natural to get cancer, for instance. But then you go to see a doctor for help, and the doctor is paid, right? Maybe not enough, but they're paid. And whether or not we as patients die. So because we have to maintain the medical practice, we have to maintain health, right? So, but to maintain health, you got to have patients, and to have patients, you have to have caregivers, basically, people who raise these new human beings. So how is it possible for us to say that every other job on the planet, pretty much, with the exception of caregiving for fragile human beings, is paid? Badly, maybe, but still paid. But caring for fragile human beings, babies, older people, people who may not have every ability to function, they may be abled, that is, that they may have, they may be blind, or they may not be able to move around so well, or whatever it might be. Those jobs are pretty much worthless as far as we're concerned. That is, they don't have any value. They don't have any worth, right? They are worth nothing. Okay, so this is Waring's point.